It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday. I'm tired. I'm faking energy. Oh, my foot cream's still in the shot. Awesome. Okay, it's Feedback Friday, and I'm gonna do mostly Monday's video, in part because I'm making this. I know a lot of people I talked to said I haven't had time to watch Wednesday's video. Plus, there will be another video today. I interviewed Alex McCrease, my old boss, Escapist, about his latest crowdfund for his game, his tabletop game, Ascendant. And we talked about the open gaming license whole thing. He was really insightful. I've been looking for somebody to talk about that and, going forward, what it means. So make sure to check that out. But that's not a mistake. It's extra content today because I wanted to get it out while his crowdfund, his Kickstarter, is still live. So check that out too. It's a really cool system. You may remember I had him on to talk about his comic as well, which is part of it. So, okay. If you would like to support this channel before I get into Feedback Friday, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. A Ko-fi supporter gave me the suggestion. I have like a monthly one session tier. Somebody asked me to add 2 sessions a month. So I'm going to do that. Really appreciate the feedback there. Again, I really, really appreciate the support people are giving to other people. Because it shows people that the world gives a shit, right? It also gives people the ability to help other people. And to me, it's the Jewish concept of tzedakah, not getting super amount of credit. I've been thinking about, because, direct sponsorships and whether people would want to know a bit about the person they're helping. I don't know. Looking for feedback on that. Anyway, there was one interesting comment about AI art on Two Women Talking, and normally I don't do Two Women Talking stuff. Somebody said we should do a feedback thing for Two Women Talking. I'll talk to Song, see how she feels about that, because we normally address the stuff that either she responds in comments or we address the stuff we want to address on the podcast. More on that when we get to the Manly Monday comments. But one person mentioned that at the end, AI art is a glorified filter tool and or search engine and or stock image library. And I agree. For me, the biggest purpose for AI art that I'm thinking of using is a replacement for stock images, because stock images are really fucking boring. And if I can make copyright-free art for stuff when I can't afford to pay an artist, I'm gonna, right? And is that taking any work away from anybody? No, because I wouldn't be hiring someone. It would just be stock images. And yes, somebody produces that stock image, but I think eventually it might be like the stock image galleries, that if you want to use your, if you want to put your art into the database, maybe there's a way of tracking the diffusion so that people can make a little money if their art is used as a base for something. Maybe. I don't know. I'm sure the AI companies will be really, really loath to do that, but just spitballing. Let's get to the stuff that matters. Your comments. Now, the miscommunications video generated a lot of comments. And one thing I want to clear up, because this dude who's super smart and an absolute sweetheart said this to me, so if he's thinking this, I want to make sure everybody else is clear. And this was purely an emotional response, and he stated it as such, and so, I just want to reassure people on this point, because his concern was, oh, my communication style is more like the feminine style than the masculine style. Does this mean I'm not a real man? No. If in fact, if you want to be a more effective communicator, you should be able to code switch, essentially. So you can understand and communicate with different kinds of communicators. I would say not only does it make you not less of a man, it makes you more of an adult if you can go back and forth, and engage anecdote and feelings in that personal touch when it's appropriate, and be able to do the data-driven argument also when it makes sense, right? I found it interesting that somebody identified as they came up on Myers-Briggs as an INF male. And INF males are very rare. I have now split. It's funny, since I started doing more mental health work, I pop as INFJ as often as I pop on INTJ, depending on the quiz. But yeah, INFJ males are rare. What does that mean? It means they're rare, right? But the comment was, he has a very readable face. And somebody identified it as a, girl-like feature, and went on to say men tend to play the game and assume the expression required by the context. And that got me thinking about, is it playing the game or the game playing them, right? Because a lot of men, the bulk of my clients are men. Permission to have emotions is a big topic. Permission to express emotions in men is a minefield. So I think it's a bit uncharitable to say men play the game by assuming expressions required by context, because I think, I've talked to a lot of men who would like to be able to be more authentic in terms of their emotional communication and feel like they can't. So I just wanted to put that out there. Somebody made a comment about a previous abuser told other people that if he made eye contact with a woman, it meant they wanted to go out with them. People shouldn't do that. This has been coming up a lot regarding identity, regarding especially gender identity. Mind reading is bad. And some people have a very strong reaction to that, because if you grow up in an abusive home, mind reading is something that can become survival. But that's why it's abusive. A non-abusive person should not make you mind read. But something like that, oh, it means that if you do that. Anybody who has done any training in communication or, deception detection, you only know when something's off. You don't know why unless you drill down. And my third grade bus driver, Frank, used to say, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. Words to live by. He also was the king of, when you point the finger at another person, the other three fingers are pointing back at you. Frank has like Kiryu Kazama level layman's wisdom. I loved my bus driver, Frank. He was the best. Somebody else pointed out that, yes, female communication, consensus building, all that stuff, great, but women have their own dominance game. And that is true. Yes, women are more trained to share But with that comes forced agreeableness. And this is true because this is where I fail. I call it the nice game, right? And that isn't actually authentic communication. It's not effective communication. It is, I say the nice game is this really nasty game that women play with each other, that the winner pushes the loser to the point where they have to not be nice. And then they lose the nice game. And I despise it because that isn't authentic communication. It doesn't make people feel like they can actually be honest. You don't get better ideas if everybody's playing a game of social brinksmanship. Brinkmanship. I need to take out the S there. That is just as toxic as not saying anything. And by toxic, I mean it slowly eats away, poisons everything. And this is really important because the best ideas come when people can say, I don't understand, or I don't get it, I'm not following, or even I don't like it, right? The confidence in the idea goes down, but the actual quality goes up. And, this is why diversity is also important in groups, right? So there's a lot of interesting, one person said it made them realize how few typical women they've interacted with. But I want to break down one comment, partially because I found it endearing, partially because this commenter is testing me, partially because this is going to be a teachable moment for this person and everybody else. Here we go. Regarding talking over people, assuming there's a link to the comment I made about your interaction with Song in your Two Women Talking a few weeks ago, the accusation was not you're bossy or whatever. The accusation was you're not letting Song talk. That's not how conversations work. Got that? Fair, but, we talked on Two Women Talking about the fact that Song was sick that week. That was, remember I said about assume you make an ass out of you and me, right? Assuming, but here we go on. Because this is the part I'm like, teachable moment. The accompanying feeling about that behavior was that you seem to want to hear yourself talk rather than participate in a conversation. I repeat, the accompanying feeling about that behavior was that you seem to want to hear yourself talk. You know what I'm going to say if you've watched my content at all. You seemed is not a feeling. The accompanying feeling about that behavior, accusation, you seem to want to hear yourself talk. That is not a feeling. And this is where a lot of male-style communicators get into trouble trying to what they believe is express emotions. That is not an expression of emotion. That is a confrontation based on perceived facts. And if you think you're talking about your feelings and you're getting a bad reaction, that might be why. Because, this conversation goes on. You make a point to encourage people to express when what they're saying is about how they feel, but then took that expression of feeling and trashed it as if it were purely an attack against you. I feel that you seem to want to hear yourself talk is a criticism, not a feeling. Again, I felt sad, angry, confused, whatever. That's a feeling. But it goes on. This is a behavior that I've encountered in both work and personal life, as well as seen on news talk programs on TV, where the primary goal of the format seems to be to shout everyone else down in order to prove your point. I find it unbelievably irritating to deal with personally, and I'll generally dismiss anything said by anyone engaging in that behavior in talk shows or avoid the shows entirely because there's essentially no useful information being conveyed, just a lot of shouting. This is why I continue to come back to you, commenter, because yes, the way you are communicating does get you dismissed. But there's more. I find it strange that you would describe this conversation style as masculine, as I've only encountered this speaking style in a handful of people in my life. It is very much an outlier in behavior, not a principal style of half the population. Being a primary style in talk radio TV does not make it masculine. It makes it a specialized style for a particular presentation format. The commenter is not recognizing that he is using the style of communication I described. But here we go. Plenty of women engage in the same behavior on such shows, but claiming that they're masculine because of that seems to be a misattribution of the behavior to a gender rather than a format. No, wrong. Women have to train to speak that way. And it is a huge thing. You are crushed if you don't learn to talk that way. And part of the reason there are much fewer women in those formats is because it takes more work to code switch, to learn a style of communication that is unnatural. And then if you apply that in the rest of the world, you get socially punished for being unfeminine. Look at all the assumptions this commenter made about me. They were all wrong. It happened because Song was sick and I was filling air to give her a chance to think. But he assumed I wanted to hear myself talk rather than participate in a conversation. Dead wrong in terms of what I wanted. This is what happens to women. The assumptions about our intents are very different than the speaker doing the exact same thing, but he's in good faith. Isn't this beautiful? I love this. Okay. However, it's interesting that you mentioned theater training as a way to better understand nonverbal communication and be more expressive and such. Of the people that I can remember that I personally know who have the conversation behavior pattern of not handling conversation well, all but one of them have had theater training. The last is a chemical engineer, and I actually don't know if he ever did theater when he was younger. I would find it a bit surprising if he did. This makes me wonder if there's a correlation there. Namely, if theater training in teaching you a particular set of nonverbal cues leads to a general blindness of the nonverbal cues that non-theater trained people use, or misunderstanding or misapplication of cues that aren't conveying what the theater training would suggest. In other words, is theater training making you better at nonverbal communication in general, or only a very particular dialect of nonverbal communication? Note that this isn't suggesting a cause-effect relationship. I know a number of theater people who are perfectly reasonable conversationalists. Okay. However, those who are problematic are also remarkably biased towards theater training. Edit, I should note that I never considered that there was any commonality among those that I've had to deal with on the conversation issue. It was your bringing up theater training that made me notice the correlation. I have no idea if this correlation is in any way meaningful, but the associated concept of dialects of nonverbal communication, of which I can think of quite a few offhand, seems something interesting to explore. Also, slightly amused. Make more eye contact good, smile more bad. Dig. All right, dude. Listen, you're judging instead of listening. You're jumping to a lot of assumptions and, perhaps, just perhaps, people are having to be more aggressive in conversations with you because you're not letting them just talk. And it this is a thing that I see again and again and again. And it gets people bad results and then they don't know why. And this is an example of it where someone makes an accusation started by I feel, and then the person takes what they actually said, and then it's you encourage people to talk about how you feel, but then you take it and you treat it as an attack against you. Well, the way that was phrased, it was a criticism of me. It wasn't I felt confused that you talked way more this episode. It was I felt that you seem to want to hear yourself talk rather than participate in a conversation. That's not a feeling. So, is this supposed to be criticism I'll listen to? Well, no. It can be dismissed out of hand for complete lack of self-awareness. But this is the echo chamber where, I mean, this person says they watch a lot of news, so there is a lot of I feel that you are wrong going on out there, and people internalize that because various reasons. But people may not tell you what's wrong with I feel that you are wrong. I will, because I actually am interested in better communication. Also, it really amuses me when people start assuming all these ill intents on my part when I'm just responding to what they actually said. And it amazes me, the stuff that people assume. And I only know my own intents, right? So people come out with this crazy stuff. She clearly just wanted to hear herself talk. She is clearly a narcissist. None of it's true. So what's so clear, right? Nothing's clear about it. These are assumptions. These may even be projections somehow. But it happens so often to me that I've actually become more suspicious when other people are labeled. It takes a lot of direct evidence for me to actually think ill intent about someone in the media. And there are people where I have enough evidence. But if you want to be taken in good faith, don't use I feel as a manipulation to think you get a jail free card on the accountability and responsibility for issuing a criticism, especially if you assume intents and you're wrong. It is not a free pass. It is not a get out of jail free card. And there are times I catch myself now going, I feel and think, because some of it is purely an emotional reaction. Some of it is actually a constructed argument. And I really think that is me merging that being forced to defend everything I do. Because somebody's going to go, well, I feel that you just wanted to hear yourself talk. If I could do my other work and never make another video again, I would. I am an introvert, profoundly introverted. Introverts by our nature do not enjoy hearing ourselves talk. I actually had to get used to hearing the sound of my own voice on audio recordings and video. It does sound different than inside your head. I've gotten used to it now, but I still don't like watching my own recordings. It's a completely wrong claim. But what can I do about it? Nothing. I'm not saying this to persuade the commenter. He keeps coming back. It can't, didn't take the note the first time. Probably not going to take the note now. This is for other people. It's an example of what not to do. if you want to be heard by rational thinking people who also are willing to admit that they have emotions. And this is something I do that takes people aback. When people try to gish gallop, this guy did it to me on the whole Disney thing, shanking DeSantis on the way out the door. He made a claim that wasn't true, that the special district that Disney got in Florida is unique, possibly unique in the size, but there are more special districts in Illinois and California than in Florida. The Golden Gate Bridge, for example, has its own special district for transportation across the bridge. That's just one example. But he was like, I never said that it was unique. And so I pulled a "this you" with the quote. Fine, let's talk about Disney. It's like, no, let's not. You don't start off, because it was, of course, you've drunk on the rat turd Kool-Aid and all that stuff. It's like, you don't start off insulting people and then get to talk about what you want to talk about. And I really think all of online discourse would be better served by setting those boundaries. No, you don't get to falsely accuse, drop a bunch of unproven claims, and be rude and insulting, and then get your way. No, you don't. Because that's showing no respect for the person you're talking to. And if you can't show respect for the person you're talking to, why should they listen? Because respect means benefit of the doubt. Respect means not accusing them of things and making them prove a non-event. Right? And generally, respect means knowing that the person is not just going to take it. They may come back and, if someone goes, hold up, you're wrong, right? You call it trashing it as purely an attack against you. No. Saying you're wrong isn't trashing it. Saying you're wrong is you're wrong. Trash argument is trash argument. You don't want somebody to say your argument is trash. Don't make a trash argument. And making assumption and being wrong, not only you're wrong, so people are less likely to listen to, you also unnecessarily judged, and by that meant jumped to a conclusion. You treated your assumption as fact, which makes you a less rational thinker and more likely to be wrong. So not only were you provably wrong, the reason you were wrong makes you more likely to be wrong in future. And that's why people probably aren't listening to you. And that's why you feel that the conversation is one-sided. I mean, yeah, there could be people who are just bowling over in conversation, but here's the other thing. Introvert. Extroverts are more extroverted. Extroverts are going to talk more. That's not them dominating. That's not them being domineering. That's just extroverts make more sounds. That isn't some nefarious intent. That isn't an attempt to bully. That's just them being extroverted. It is not better or worse. It is just different. And this quality good, quality bad is why I despise the Big Five personality index, and why I tend to stick to Myers-Briggs despite the flaws and shortcomings in it. There's no perfect system. It's just the best of the ones that are out there in terms of a common language. So on that note, again, workshop April 29th, about not beating yourself up. If you find yourself very judgmental, it could be because you're beating yourself up. And me and my bubblehead facilitators that you've heard on It's Not Therapy the last couple of weeks will be there. The way it will work is it's going to be a 45-minute presentation There'll be a couple questions for the audience, like if anybody wants to volunteer why they beat themselves up and stuff like that. But it'll be the reasons we do it, where it comes from, how to do it less. And then there will be a directed discussion. And if there are a ton of people, we're going to break into small groups, precisely because it's easier for introverts to get a word in edgewise if the groups are smaller, right? And that's how it's going to go. Tickets are $10 each. The first 50 are 2 for 1. Do I expect 50 tickets to sell? Probably not. But I figure, hey, we'll do it. We'll try it. This is all an experiment. But I'd really like to see people there. It'll be non-judgmental. It's different than YouTube, right? YouTube, I have to joust. With these things, it's non-judgmental. It's just the facts. Obviously, there will be some, here's how to communicate better. That's the whole idea, not beating yourself up, right? And a lot of people who come out more negative than they intend or they think they're being, it's because their internal self-talk is incredibly negative. It's so negative they don't see how negative it is. And there is, if anybody's interested in a little preview, I don't believe in affirmations. I start with neutrality. Because somebody who's really, really deep down, you give somebody an affirmation, they're just like, yeah, bullshit. And it just makes them beating themselves up worse. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about. So until then, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.